In this episode, we begin with a simple but very important question for any security program. And that question is whether the organization is truly ready when pressure arrives. Many new learners assume readiness means having tools installed, policies written, and smart people on staff. But those things alone do not prove that a team can detect, understand, and respond effectively during a real event. Readiness has to be tested in a way that shows how people, processes, and technology perform together when something unexpected happens. That is where blue teaming, purple teaming, and red teaming become useful. These approaches help organizations move beyond assumptions and see how well their defenses actually work in practice. Instead of asking whether a security control exists on paper, they ask whether it helps real people notice suspicious behavior, make sound decisions, communicate clearly, and improve before a genuine attacker creates harm. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is part of our companion study series. The first book is a detailed study guide that explains the exam and helps you prepare for it with confidence. The second is a Kindle-only ebook with 1,000 flashcards you can use on your mobile device or Kindle for quick review. You can find both at Cyber.Me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. Readiness in cybersecurity means more than being busy or well-equipped. It means the organization can notice meaningful threats, understand what those threats might be doing, respond in a coordinated way, and recover without unnecessary confusion or delay. That sounds straightforward, but in real environments, many hidden weaknesses stay invisible until someone deliberately tests the system. A tool may generate alerts, yet nobody may know how to interpret them quickly. A process may look clear in a document, yet teams may disagree about roles when the pressure is real. A communication path may exist, yet the wrong people may receive the wrong information at the wrong time. This is why validation matters so much. You do not truly know whether security is ready until you expose it to realistic challenge. Blue teaming, purple teaming, and red teaming give organizations structured ways to create that challenge and learn from it before the stakes become much higher. Blue teaming is the defensive side of this picture, and it is often the easiest place for beginners to start. A blue team is focused on protecting the environment, detecting suspicious activity, investigating alerts, responding to incidents, and improving defenses over time. In many organizations, the blue team function includes security analysts, defenders, incident responders, engineers, and others responsible for monitoring and protection. The important point is not the specific job title. The important point is that blue teaming represents the people and practices used to defend the organization day to day. When readiness is being validated, blue teaming shows how well the defenders actually perform under realistic conditions. Can they notice abnormal activity, separate noise from priority, escalate appropriately, and take action before the situation grows worse? Those questions make blue teaming much more than a passive role. It becomes a practical way to observe whether defense, detection, and response are strong enough to matter when it counts. Red teaming is the offensive simulation side, but it is important to explain that carefully for beginners. A red team is not the same as a criminal attacker, even though it may act in ways that imitate adversary behavior. The red team's purpose is to test the organization by using realistic methods, paths, and techniques that help reveal how well the environment resists or detects meaningful threat activity. In other words, red teaming is not performed just to prove someone can break something. It is done to help the organization understand where its weaknesses are and how a determined adversary might move through the environment if given the opportunity. A good red team thinks in terms of goals, stealth, access, movement, and impact because that is how real adversaries often behave. For a beginner, the main lesson is that red teaming is valuable because it replaces abstract fear with observed evidence about what defenses hold, what defenses fail, and what defenders miss. Purple teaming sits between those two ideas and is best understood as a collaborative learning model. Instead of keeping the attacking and defending sides completely separate until the end, purple teaming focuses on helping them work together in a structured way so the organization learns faster. The red side demonstrates methods, behaviors, or attack paths. The blue side observes how well it can detect, understand, and respond. Then both sides compare what happened, identify detection gaps, discuss why those gaps existed, and improve controls or monitoring together. This makes purple teaming extremely valuable for beginner understanding because it shows that the goal is not competition for its own sake. The goal is improvement. Purple teaming turns testing into a shared learning cycle where defenders gain insight into adversary behavior and attackers help explain which actions were visible, which were invisible, and how the environment can become more resilient. It is one of the clearest examples of security maturity because it treats testing as a path to stronger readiness rather than as a performance contest. One of the biggest benefits of using these approaches is that they validate security in realistic context. Many organizations can pass checklists, complete audits, or prove that certain tools are installed, yet still perform poorly when facing live suspicious behavior. That happens because readiness is not just about presence. It is about performance. A logging tool matters only if the right events are collected and analysts know how to use them. A detection rule matters only if it produces a meaningful signal soon enough to influence response. An incident plan matters only if the people involved can follow it coherently under pressure. Blue teaming, purple teaming, and red teaming make those truths visible. They help organizations observe whether security controls support actual action or merely create a sense of comfort. For beginners, this is a powerful shift because it shows that good security is not judged only by what has been purchased or documented. It is judged by how well the organization performs when someone tries to challenge its assumptions. These methods also help clarify the difference between readiness validation and simple weakness scanning. A scan may reveal that a system is outdated or misconfigured, and that information is useful, but readiness validation asks a broader question. If a meaningful adversary action occurs, will the organization notice it, understand its significance, and respond in time to reduce harm? That question includes technology, but it also includes people, process, timing, communication, escalation, and judgment. A blue team may have all the right dashboards and still fail because nobody knows which alert matters first. A red team may gain access through a path that defenders technically recorded, but the logs were never reviewed in a way that made the behavior visible. Purple teaming helps expose exactly that kind of gap. For a new learner, the lesson is that readiness is a whole system idea. It is not enough to identify technical weaknesses one by one. You also have to validate whether the security program can function coherently when those weaknesses are used in realistic ways. A strong readiness exercise usually begins with a clear purpose. The organization should know what kind of capability it wants to test and why that capability matters. It may want to validate how well identity abuse is detected, how quickly suspicious lateral movement is noticed, whether sensitive data access stands out appropriately, or how incident escalation works when multiple teams are involved. This focus matters because not every test can cover everything at once, and vague testing often produces vague lessons. A targeted validation effort helps the organization observe what signals were generated, what the blue team saw, what they missed, how they interpreted the activity, and what slowed or supported response. Red teaming provides the challenge. Blue teaming shows the defensive reality, and purple teaming helps connect the results to improvement. When beginners understand this structure, they can see that these methods are not random adversarial games. They are deliberate ways of asking whether the organization can actually perform the tasks it believes it is capable of performing. Another important part of readiness validation is observing time. Security often succeeds or fails not only because something was seen, but because it was seen too late or interpreted too slowly. A defender may eventually discover malicious behavior, but if the adversary had already moved through critical systems, escalated privileges, or reached valuable data, then readiness still needs improvement. Blue teaming, purple teaming, and red teaming help show where time is being lost. Perhaps the alert arrived quickly but lacked context. Perhaps the right evidence existed but nobody correlated it. Perhaps escalation required too many approvals. Perhaps communication between technical teams and decision-makers was unclear. These are real readiness issues, even if the organization eventually figured out what happened. For beginners, this matters because it teaches that success is not merely catching something at some point. True readiness means detection, understanding, and response happen early enough to make a meaningful difference in reducing damage, preserving trust, and controlling the direction of the event. These approaches also help organizations validate behavior rather than just settings. An attacker does not care whether a control looks impressive on a spreadsheet. What matters is whether the control affects what they can do, how visible they become, and how much time defenders gain. Blue teaming measures defensive behavior in action. Red teaming measures whether offensive behavior can achieve goals without being noticed or stopped. Purple teaming measures how well those observations are translated into immediate learning. This behavior-focused perspective is useful because it pushes the organization to think in adversary terms. What can an attacker try? What traces would that create? What would defenders notice? And what would happen next? That is much more valuable than assuming the existence of a tool guarantees a defensive outcome. For a beginner, it is one of the most practical lessons in security operations. Real security is about outcomes and decision quality, not just about whether certain protective components appear to be present in the environment. Communication becomes especially visible during these exercises, and that is one reason they are so helpful. A blue team may detect something meaningful, yet if it cannot communicate clearly to leadership, operations staff, or other support functions, the organization may still struggle badly during a real incident. Red teaming can expose how quickly a situation becomes serious when communication is slow or fragmented. Purple teaming can then help analyze where the message broke down, what information was missing, and how reporting should improve. This matters because readiness is never purely technical. Real incidents involve legal concerns, business priorities, operational trade-offs, and questions about who decides what under uncertainty. If security findings remain trapped inside a technical silo, the organization may lose precious time. For beginners, that reinforces a larger truth. Readiness includes the ability to translate technical events into understandable risk so that the people responsible for broader decisions can act with clarity instead of confusion. Another strength of these methods is that they create learning grounded in evidence rather than opinion. Security teams often have strong instincts about what is working well and what is not, but instincts can be wrong, incomplete, or influenced by recent experience. Blue teaming, purple teaming, and red teaming create a more reliable basis for improvement because they produce observable outcomes. A detection rule either helped or it did not. An escalation path either supported timely action or it introduced delay. A control either slowed adversary behavior or it was bypassed without much difficulty. This evidence helps the organization improve in a way that is less emotional and more focused. Instead of arguing about whether defenders are good enough in the abstract, the team can look at what actually happened and ask how readiness can become stronger. That kind of grounded improvement is especially important for beginners to understand because it shows that validation is not about blame. It is about converting experience into measurable learning. At the same time, these practices must be used thoughtfully. A common mistake is treating red teaming like theater, where the main goal is dramatic success or embarrassment rather than useful learning. Another mistake is treating blue team performance as a test of personal worth instead of a reflection of system conditions, process quality, and available context. Purple teaming helps reduce those risks because it frames the activity as collaboration toward improvement, but that only works if the culture supports honest discussion. Teams need to be able to say what was missed, why it was missed, and what changes are needed without turning every gap into a personal failure. A mature organization understands that readiness validation is supposed to reveal weakness. That is the point. If exercises only confirm what everyone already believed, then the value of testing is limited. Beginners should remember that useful security practice is not about protecting pride. It is about strengthening performance before a real adversary forces the issue. These methods also become more powerful over time when organizations repeat them and compare results. One exercise may reveal weak visibility into endpoint activity. Another may show that identity-related alerts are noisy and hard to prioritize. A later purple team effort may demonstrate that improvements made since the last cycle help defenders identify suspicious behavior much faster. This repeated learning is what turns validation into maturity. The organization no longer treats readiness as a one-time check. It treats readiness as a living capability that must be exercised, observed, and improved continuously. For beginners, this is an important concept because it changes the way security success is understood. Success is not the absence of challenge. Success is the ability to face challenge, learn from it, and become more effective with each cycle. Blue teaming, purple teaming, and red teaming all contribute to that cycle by making the security program visible in action rather than only in theory. Common misconceptions are worth clearing up before we finish. Blue teaming is not passive monitoring alone, because it includes active defense, investigation, and improvement. Red teaming is not random attack behavior for entertainment, because it should serve a clear testing purpose tied to organizational readiness. Purple teaming is not merely a meeting between two groups, because its real value comes from collaborative analysis that leads to measurable defensive improvement. Another misconception is that only very large organizations benefit from these ideas. The scale can vary, but the underlying principle applies broadly. Any organization that depends on systems, data, and coordinated response can learn from testing whether defense works as expected. The exact form may differ, but the need to validate readiness remains the same. A smaller organization may use simplified exercises, while a larger one may run more complex engagements. Yet both are still asking the same practical question about whether security functions effectively under realistic challenge. As we close, the main lesson is that readiness must be validated, not assumed. Blue teaming shows how well the organization defends, detects, and responds in practice. Red teaming creates realistic challenge that reveals whether meaningful weaknesses exist in visibility, process, or control effectiveness. Purple teaming brings both perspectives together so that lessons are understood quickly and translated into stronger defenses. For a brand new learner, this topic matters because it shows that real security confidence comes from tested performance rather than from tools, policies, or hope alone. When organizations use these methods well, they stop treating readiness like a label and start treating it like a capability that can be observed, improved, and proved over time. That is what makes blue teaming, purple teaming, and red teaming so valuable. They help security move from assumption to evidence, and from evidence to improvement that actually makes the organization harder to surprise and easier to defend.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit DailyCyber.News.